Hey, this is a story that we touched on a year ago, and it seems like a year before that as well. Well, not me in this role, but it just keeps on coming around. That is the imminent supposed death of Channel 31, and yet, like the true fighter it is, it just keeps on rising up. Where are we at right now, though? Let's chat to the General Manager, Shane Dunlop of Channel 31. Good morning, Shane.
Morning, Sammy. How are you?
I'm pretty well, thank you, and I feel for you. This must be the equivalent of a very intense gym exercise session this time every year, because we were talking this same time last year and you were given a last-minute reprieve. What's happening this time around?
Yeah, I think I get PTSD every June, but we've been doing this for almost 10 years, if you can believe it. Back in 2014, then Communications Minister Malcolm Turnbull said that he needed community TV stations to get off the air because they needed our spectrum for urgent alternative uses. And in November of last year, the federal government finally announced what their spectrum plans would be. And in that document that they released along with those plans, it was basically outlined that the space that we occupy won't be required until as early as 2024, possibly as late as 2026. So you're looking at there being, from Malcolm Turnbull's original determination in 2014, at least a 10-year period that they, where they didn't actually need the space, and we've been put through hell in the meantime. And so we're still scheduled to be switched off at the end of this month, and that's despite there being an actual requirement for us to be switched off for at least 3 more years.
To be switched off, for 3 more years?
Sorry, I missed that.
Sorry, did you say there's a requirement to be switched off for the next 3 years?
Yeah, there is no requirement for us.
There's no need, you mean?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So there is, if we're switched off at the end of June, and this has been the case for a long time now, there will be replaced with nothing but static.
I am chatting to Shane Dunlop, who's been shatting himself at the thought of Channel 31 going off air. If listeners are just tuning in, Channel 31, or if you're new to Melbourne, Channel 31 has been our community television station for as long as I can remember growing up watching it. I got my start on in comedy. That was my first ability to be on TV, as did many other fellow comics broadcasting out of the Comics Lounge in North Melbourne. People like Rove McManus got their start on Channel 31. It has been a huge and very important part of our media landscape here in the city. Shane, nonetheless, the world changes, the world moves on. Analog TV is going the way of the dodo, it seems. And from what I understand, last year the government said, well, we're giving you this extra year to get your house in order for online broadcast. Where has that got to, and is that not going to be sufficient for future?
Yeah, look, we've been like all traditional broadcasters. We've spent, the last 7 or 8 years looking at how digital disruption affects us and how we continue to adopt other digital platforms to make sure that, as the entire sort of viewing public changes how they watch television, we're changing with them. The difference really for us is that going from, and we're the only broadcaster who's being asked to do this, by the way, switching entirely off TV and relying on digital operations, and the financial realities of that are extreme. And I can sort of tell you how much, sponsorship revenue we make if we're on TV and how much we would make if we are relying on AdSense revenue alone. It is drastically different.
That sort of surprises me, Shane. I just got to say, I would have thought analog figures are just, really dwindling, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, just the fact that it's all about streaming and online, and who is turning to analog TV to watch community station these days.
Yeah, but I think if you were to look into where advertising spend was, you would find that those two things are that any of the commercial networks, streaming platforms, for example, whether it's 10 Now or 7 Plus, etc., they may well be starting to see an uptick in viewers, but where those networks are still making the lion's share of their sponsor. We're talking about somewhere between 70 to 80% of the commercial network's revenue would still be being funneled through the free-to-air signal, and then being kicked on to the... so if any of those guys were asked to do this, they would be screaming bloody murder, because it's not financially TV is still king when it comes to sponsorship and advertising.
Shane, I was going to say we're coming up to the news, but just quickly, what is the next step here? So there's been no official decision made. In the absence of a decision, you're being switched off at the end of the month, but are you hopeful that there will be another reprieve granted?
We think common sense should prevail, and there are still people who rely on free-to-air, particularly older people, particularly people from non-English speaking backgrounds. And over the last 12 months, that's been super important to those demographics to still have us on the air.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that common sense should prevail. And whilst there's no alternative use, that Channel 31 should be allowed to stay on the air for the next 3 years.
Well, Shane, I have a particular bias here, being as I am, just a big supporter of the station. But let's wait and see where it goes, and we'll certainly try and keep listeners updated as well. So all the best to you.
Cheers. Thanks, Sammy.
Shane Dunlop there, General Manager of Channel 31. If you ever got home late, perhaps a bit drunk on a Saturday night in the 90s or noughties, you might have turned on and enjoyed the Fish broadcast overnight amongst the many highlights of our local and valuable station.